Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our work session on October 4th. The mayor had a personal item she had to take care of, and we wish to wish our communications manager, Wes Decker, a very happy birthday today. Happy birthday.
When you put a public notice out about
So you guys are stuck with me running the meeting. The first, I have two proclamations. One is for Character Counts Week, the other is Fire Prevention Month. Carolyn, saw you here. So the proclamation for Character Counts Week, October 16th to the 22nd of 2022. Whereas the next generation will be stewards of our communities, nation, and world in critical times, and the present and future well-being of our society requires an involved, caring citizenry with good character. And whereas the character of the nation is only as strong as the character of its individual citizens, and the public good is advanced when people are taught that good character counts in personal relationships, in the workplace, school, and throughout the community. And whereas character counts provides a framework of universal values that transcend culture, religious and political and socioeconomic values through the 6 pillars of character: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And whereas these pillars of character can be learned and modeled by the leaders of our community to improve interactions in our society among citizens of all ages, in turn fostering a higher quality of life and enhancing the image of our city. And whereas we count on our partners to help provide strong and constructive guidance to our citizens through character counts in our homes, schools, religious institutions, civic groups, places of business, and community gathering places. And whereas the character and conduct of our youth reflect the character and conduct of society, therefore every adult has a responsibility to teach and model the core values, and every social institution has a responsibility to promote the development of good character. Now therefore, be it resolved, with the support of the City Council, the Mayor of Hagerstown, Emily Keller, does hereby proclaim and recognize October 16th to the 22nd, 2022 to be Character Counts Week, and urge all city employees to seek out opportunities to incorporate these core principles into their work in parks and recreation activities, child care programs, community events, and she encourages all citizens, corporate and individuals, to model these traits of good character and an ongoing commitment to promote character development and proper behavior throughout our community. Signed by the mayor. It's for you. Want to say a couple words?
Thank you for recognizing Character Counts Month, and certainly the coalition agrees that it's not just a month, it's year-round, and we are advocates of modeling good character from the top down, and I'm always happy to come in the council room and see the 6 pillars on your walls, and so the whole community can see what you stand for and share that with the rest of the community. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carolyn?
Carolyn, we're probably going to get a picture.
That's okay.
All right, who all's coming up?
Everybody took a picture, but Dale's gonna send it to you.
So October is Fire Prevention Month, and whereas the City of Hagerstown is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in, working in, and visiting the City of Hagerstown. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greater risk from fire. And whereas working smoke alarms in the home reduce the risk of dying in a reported fire by more than half. And whereas 3 out of 5 home fire deaths occur in homes with no smoke alarms or in homes where smoke alarms fail to operate. And whereas residents should test their smoke detectors weekly, replace smoke alarms every 10 years, and replace batteries when chirping. And whereas Hagerstown residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan and who exit their homes when a smoke detector activates are better prepared in the event a fire should occur, thus making them more likely to survive a fire. And whereas Hagerstown Fire Department personnel and its volunteer companies are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention, engineering, and education. And whereas the 2022 Fire Prevention Week theme, Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape, these themes focus on reinforcing the critical importance of developing a home escape plan with all members of the household and practicing it regularly. Now, therefore, with the support of the City Council, the Mayor, Emily Keller, does hereby recognize the month of October 2022 as Fire Prevention Month and urge all residents to install smoke alarms in every bedroom, outside each sleeping area, and on every level of the home, including the basement, and to know 2 ways out of every room, if possible, and to practice your home fire drill at least twice a year with everyone in the household. Signed by the Mayor. That's for you. Let's say a few words.
Yeah, this year we have the 100th anniversary of the fire prevention message. It's probably the longest running public safety message for the citizens out there. We want to remind everybody to practice their home fire escape plans. I should do them at least twice a year, and they should practice not only one during the daytime hours, but one during the time you're sleeping.
Sure, yeah. As fires occur, right?
That's correct. Yes. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief?
Just want to thank Mayor and Council for their continued support. One other practical piece of advice in addition to what we listed in the proclamation is close before you doze. If you shut your door and that fire stays behind that door, you have a exponential chance of surviving that fire. So if you're not in the habit of closing bedroom doors when you go to bed, it's a good habit to get into. Close before you doze. Thank you.
You guys are so willing. Eric, you coming?
Every day though. A little late today. Usually it's about 3:30.
Don't be late, fire won't wait.
Okay, next up, Coalition 2022 review and 2023 request. Jim Kirchhoff, Paul Fry.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for your support over the past years for our coalition. Paul Fry, Washington County Chamber of Commerce, we're the managing partners for the coalition. We have before you, we've given you the book this past year. It's things we had on our list. We've also given you the impacts from this past year, 2022 General Assembly legislative session, and then what we're working on so far for the 2023 session in the one titled Coalition Meeting Minutes. We want to thank you. We're in our 18th year now as a coalition. We want to thank the city for the support over the years. We think we've had some great success, in particular over the last few years. And as you might know, we're going to have a new governor, we're going to have a new comptroller, new everybody, lots of new folks running the committees. And so we think it's even more important to go as a coalition with one voice and with a group of folks. So with that in mind, Jim's going to talk about what we've accomplished, and then we'll talk about where we're headed.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you again. In regard to what we accomplished, on the first page, we gave you a summary from last month. I'll just kind of highlight the parts of the coalition's agenda starting halfway down the page. We had a lot of success last year on many of the agenda items, the majority of which were positively impacting the city. We had the Task Force for Economic Future Western Development, or Western Maryland, also known as the George Edwards Fund. The $50 million that went into that fund will help a lot of projects in the 3 Western Maryland counties, including ours. I know Paul sits on that board. I think Councilwoman McIntyre sat on that board to help deliver that. So We're fortunate to get that funded and hoping to see the funding start flowing out either by the end of this year or early next year. The enterprise zone reform, there was some legislation that we were concerned about that might affect the enterprise zone program. I know Jill and Susan from the county, Jill from the city, who also talked with us about this, trying to keep that legislation from getting implemented the way it was originally submitted. That was scaled back dramatically to the point where it did not negatively impact the enterprise zone, which I know has been helpful for a lot of projects here in downtown. The EMS support legislation, after many years of trying to get the state to raise the reimbursement fee for our EMS transports, they did get a 50% increase last year, which we worked hard to try to get this one across. I know our lobbyists spent a lot of time on this with some other people within the state and our delegation. That increase will help all of the fire and EMS services inside the city and outside the county. Highway user revenue has been an ongoing issue that again saw some positive change where we got some new funding for that. Kept Rodney Tissue happy. The Hagerstown Fieldhouse, I know is your number one project, got $2.5 million. I know you work with that through the delegation as well as your next guest, other lobbyist. Claire Barton Memorial Sculpture got $250,000. That was a great early start for that project. Then we also got the library funding increase, which will help our library downtown. And then I-81, we haven't heard anything yet on I-81. We continue to push that road. We appreciate the city and the county working together on that for a long time to try to get that third lane widened. The state's coming up here in early November. We are cautiously optimistic we might get some good word on that we might finally get some funding for phase 2 and get the road widened from Williamsport to Halfway Boulevard, but we still are in a wait and see mode there. I know the infra grant that we applied for recently, we did not get any money out of the infra pot, but there's a rural pot of money that we're still waiting to hear from. So we could also hope to get some money on that. Those are the main points from the agenda from 2022 that are in your blue book that we saw some movement on in a positive way. I then would point you to the last 2 pages of the next sheet, which is the minutes from our last meeting. Right now, we're working on trying to finalize the agenda for 2023. We have a meeting tomorrow that we hope to kind of finalize that, prioritize that. As you can see from this list on that page, we have quite a few items, and we hope to scale that down a little bit to make it a little more workable. I know Scott and some staff, as well as some from this board, have been present at our meetings and given us feedbacks. The Hagerstown Fieldhouse, again, we're going to keep trying to get some money for that. The Dolman Black Heritage Museum was another item that Commissioner Kiefer had brought up that's inside the city. Under Health and Public Safety, the administrator talked about the need for a water infrastructure distribution strategic plan, try to look at long-term growth inside the city and the county and how we're going to provide the water infrastructure, pay for the water infrastructure needed, and then to distribute that water to handle growth. Drug house ordinance, possibly some legislation there, some legislation to help with the tax sale and vacant abandoned houses that we have inside the city. I know you're modeling some efforts after Cumberland. 24-hour crisis center was brought up, as well as on the back, I'm highlighting here the items in the city. The old hospital site, funding for that to be a heritage park. The America 250 funding, we had a member that mentioned that. That is the 250th anniversary of our country, will be coming in 2026. Each state typically puts together some sort of plan for events. We want to make sure that the Maryland plan has some events, and they remember Washington County and City of Hagerstown in those plans, as we have a lot of state parks up here and ways to capitalize on that anniversary and help with tourism, things like that. On the bottom, under the watch list of 2023, just a couple items that probably impact the city. Again, we always look at shifting of liabilities from state to local governments. USMH operational funding, making sure that the University of Maryland system is funded adequately so USMH could continue to grow and add programs. Again, we'll keep following the highway user revenue. Also, your administrator mentioned some concerns about some possible legislation that could affect the rate structures and fee collection, disconnection policy, things like that regarding your water provisions. So we'll keep track of that to make sure if something comes up that we are prepared to provide the city side. I imagine MML will be looking at that as well, if anything comes out of that federal group that worked. Last item at the very bottom I just would bring up is, as Paul said, we're going to have a lot of new leadership at the state this year. We're going to kind of have to start over in some regards, building new relationships and letting them know all the great things happening in Hagerstown and in Washington County. We'll work to try to get some of the committees up here to visit. We've had a lot of success with that in the past where, one of the committees would come up. I know one, for example, came up downtown toward the Maryland Theater about the time we were asking for money for that big project. It made it a lot easier when we went back the next year and the year after to say, here's a project we're interested in, when they were able to come to the city and actually see it. So we're going to try to get some more visits up that way. And that's what's on our agenda. I would just encourage the council as well as all of our partners to try to look at the list and prioritize what are your top things so that we can have that discussion at our next meeting and try to kind of get this honed down a little bit to a more workable size. And then we'll start working with our lobbyist. The wording in blue on your paper were just some of the comments and feedback that we got last meeting. Our lobbyist, John Favazza, was on our call, and he gave us a little input under each item, but he's all aware of these items now, and he's on a yearly contract with us, so he is working already to try to plan for some of this stuff and see what we could do and have some success again in 2023. So our day in Annapolis is going to be on January 25th. It's a Wednesday. We hope to go back to more of the old program style where we go down for the whole day. We'll have lunch about 11:30 with the Western Maryland delegation, then have a large group meetings for 3 or 4 hours, as well as some little small group meetings as we pull people out for that, followed by a reception at 4:30 of the Washington County reception. We'd really like to pull off a good reception this year with all the new members and make a good first impression. Today we were looking at, we always try to have a reception gift for people coming in to try to draw them to the reception. In the past, we've done the Maryland flag scarves and hats and stuff like that. Well, we got a matching umbrella that BJ's Custom Creations is designing for us that we think is going to be pretty popular. So the Washington County reception has been well attended over the years. It's done a really good job from the very first time we tried it. Well, I don't even know we had it really 18 years ago. I think we just did like a little mini dinner, but over time, that's gotten to be one of the more popular receptions down there, getting a good turnout. So we hope you all can make that. Any questions? I apologize if I was going quick there. I know you have a big agenda tonight.
I have 3 comments. The first is, being around to see this, or being around long enough to see this group formulated, go through its iterations over the years. I can remember in the beginning, the creation was so that everybody's item from all these different factions of group wasn't the top item, you know what I mean? That in a sort of competing nature, and this really did well to put everybody on the same page and say, these are our top items. And I only note, as I noted to the mayor when I had a conversation with her the other day about it, that I think the book does really well to hone that down, and I'm glad to hear that's going to be the direction of the next meeting. But, it does seem like the stuff sort of continues to grow, and I'm just curious, if there's any discussion that's being had on sort of how, to compartmentalize what the really big items are, you know what I mean, versus what the other ones are in terms of how we communicate, especially to obviously a new administration that's going to be coming in, how we communicate to them on which ones we should be focusing on to say these are, because going from 4 now to like 20 on a page it's a big difference. than it was then.
That's the scrum you're looking at, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know it's tough when you, particularly when you have an item like 81 who's been on there for all 17 years, and
Oh,
will
yeah.
probably be on there, you know, for another few, because even if we get phase 2, we still got another half of the road to do. But yes, I agree. It's helpful for the partners, and I encourage whoever representative comes in from the city to kind of help us with that. Because whatever direction we get from our eight or nine partners is what we pass off to the lobbyists.
The other piece we're hearing, council member, is there's still a fair amount of money available this year, you know, with, between the federal money and then the surplus because of all the extra sales and income tax that's been collected. So we're trying to be sensitive to the big projects and also if there's some smaller ones that we can grab some of the money. But you're right, we're trying to prioritize and, you know, try to get fewer passed than we have a bunch and none get supported.
And our lobbyist did say, you know, to be aggressive on capital asks this year, more than normal. He said normally he would ask for a smaller number of projects, but he said right now, because of that, what's probably gonna be temporary, supply of surplus money, that capital one-time expenses are what they're gonna be looking at, not things that are gonna, you know, cost money every year on and on. So capital projects are popular one-time expenses, so we could probably have a little bit longer list this year than we've done in the past.
Okay. The second thing I'll say, in the absence of the mayor, I know she would say this, you know, if you're able to attend this evening, is the Crisis Center. I realize that that's a sensitive subject for obvious reasons. You know, across the board, everybody has different perspectives on that. But for me, I said it at one of our prior meetings to my counterparts here, and I'll say it again. If we don't have something, downtown will continue to be that by default. So we can have different perspectives on what that is, or how it should be, or where it should be, or what it should look like, or what it should do. But with the continued absence of something of that nature to address the issue that simply exists, it isn't like it's going to come here if it's created, it simply exists. Downtown will continue to be that by default because that's the construct of the long-term makeup of downtown.
And I just, again, say from just feedback we've had so far from partners on and off, nothing really official yet, but just the location is really the only thing I've heard. I haven't heard as many saying, don't do a crisis center, it's just where's the right location for it. That seems to be the part that draws a
I'm
little
glad we've
more
got to
difference
that
of
point
it.
in the conversation.
Yeah, I think I think most people recognize that you have to have some sort of treatment and ways to handle things short notice, 24 hour.
And the last thing I'll say is a bit selfish, and it's not about the field house, it's about schools. If we're not going to have the long-term fortitude to move student population into the schools so that the schools are evenly filled out, we are going to have the fortitude to start constructing additional schools to address the clear capacity issues that we have, especially in those schools and especially the high schools that exist within the city of Hagerstown. So that's my 2
Thank you.
cents on the schools.
And I know Kristen knows this, we were serving together, but I know the county years ago did a survey on a little study on where the right location for the high school is, which is somewhere on the east end of town, east of Eastern Boulevard. That would allow you to pull from, you know, the Smithsburg, directly Smithsburg, Boonesboro, North High, South High districts, which tends to be the districts of growth, as well as indirectly from the others, because as you say, you could shift everybody around a little bit. I know getting land was really difficult back in the early 2000s when we had that housing boom and nobody was selling land at the time, and we were working with some developers to try to do that. But I know we've had some conversations with the county as well, on
It's just-
particularly the site for a high school. It's gonna be tough to get it. It's a 4-year turnaround. You know, if you had the money today and said do it, I would imagine it's probably a 4-year process to build and design, and that, you know, we need to try to work on those.
I mean, the long-term answer can't be that we have hundreds of kids at South High learning in trailers when we have county and state surpluses. It just can't be the answer. So that's as plain as I can be about that.
Other feedback? And I know Scott and Jill have been part of these meetings, so any input you have, please share them with us. We're trying to hone this down as soon as tomorrow, perhaps. And then this is our formal request. You've been great partners over the years, and it's been $5,000. We'd ask for that again, and we've begun the outreach, and the county's supporting us at 10,000. Chief has said yes, and CVB has said yes, and I anticipate other folks, again, participating this year. We're looking for another 1 or 2 partners to be named at a later date, so.
I think you guys have been great at this herding of cats process that it is at times. I mean, before Jim
cats.
started this, you didn't have gray hair, right?
It was straight, too.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
I did this for you. You're welcome.
I appreciate it. All right, well, thanks, everybody.
He hates when I'm straight.
I do, I give you a
I
hard
know you
time.
do. I saw you on the agenda, I was like, well, I got the word.
Straighten my hair, Jim. I didn't say anything about that. I'm trying to be like you.
He's cool, man.
All right, next up is discussion with Compass General Partners.
Hi, thanks for your time tonight. I met a lot of you at the Washington County lobby night last year, so it's good to be on your home turf. So I'm Hannah Garagiola with Compass Government Relations. Met most of you. Tyler is my colleague. I'll let him sort of chat after I say a few words, but it was really eye-opening for us to come up here and see the area where we want to build the field house, and also just kind of get a sense of the town. We had a really nice meeting earlier this afternoon with some of the department heads to get a sense of kind of other priorities. Last year, we were kind of singularly focused on the field house, so it was nice to get kind of a more holistic, comprehensive understanding of what some of your government relations needs are. And we look forward to kind of putting a finer point on that list of priorities with you all and the mayor and the department heads, and having a successful legislative session. As the folks before us said, it is new leadership, but I think that's exciting and good. And obviously the mayor was on the right side of that in terms of where she placed her bets. And I think that you can leverage that and hopefully have a really successful next administration.
Thanks, Hannah, and great to meet you all. Again, my name is Tyler Bennett, also with Compass Government Relations. And I would just echo everything that Hannah said. We look forward to being your eyes and ears in Annapolis, and look forward to taking your direction and help move forward some of your priorities. And I'll just add that in addition to myself, we have 6 other members of the team too, so we take a team approach at Compass. It's not just Hannah and myself and the others that you've met so far, but you do have a full contingent of members of Compass down in Annapolis looking out for you all.
And one final thing I'll say is, as the mayor and Mr. Nice-Warner have been kind of our points when we have done strategy calls, please feel free to reach out. We are here for the entire city of Hagerstown, and we want to be your teammates.
I know I appreciate your relentless approach, so thank you. I know that you work very hard for us, and I appreciate everything you did last year in the short amount of time, so thank you, really. I know that you were very supportive of the mayor and definitely us as well, so thank you.
You're welcome. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Short and sweet.
All right, next up is Frostburg State University Hub at University Systems of Maryland.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Forgive my voice, it's terrible, so I'm gonna do my best, but I've been fighting whatever the city virus is. So I'm Jamie Nystrom. There's something going around and it's not leaving. So I'm Jamie Nystrom. I am a professor for Frostburg State University. I'm here at our USMH Center, and I've been here since 2005 working, and in 2014, I started a program called the Hub at USMH. We're now called the Frostburg Hub at USMH. And this started because at the time in Washington County, our kindergartners were dead last in the state for kindergarten readiness. And I knew enough from my teaching background to know that at first we'll be upset with teachers that they're not doing their job. And then the next group will be upset with our parents and we'll say they're not doing their job. and kids aren't coming to school ready. And so I started this little program called The Hub, and we started recruiting families, mostly from the city, to be part of our program. We've had support. I think Mr. Brucci's looking at me because he's like, he knows about this program, because you've written a letter of support for us when you were mayor, and Mr. Geisberg before you, and Ms. Keller now writes the letter of support. We normally get our funding from the state of Maryland. Don't know if you've heard, state of Maryland has a new superintendent, and in this past year, they decided to, the Office of the Superintendent decided to redo and revamp and have a grants department. Because of that and the low staffing that they have at the state, they did not release their RFPs for grants until just recently. So this summer, in August, I had a wonderful meeting with Mr. Nice Warner and his staff, and met with Stacy, met with Donna and Dana, and we started to put together a plan, and I explained what it is I needed, which is I need to get my employees back to work for the families of Hagerstown. We currently have 87 families in Hagerstown that participate in our programming. We offer, all of our programming is free. We offer programming that can connect families with other resources in the city, in the county. We offer everyday programming so families can learn about and understand what early childhood activities look like and what are the developmental milestones their child should be meeting. And then connecting them with all the different services that we have both in the city of Hagerstown and within Washington County. We've been really fortunate that Meritus Hospital and USMH provide us our space. We're at 24 North Walnut Street. We have the whole second floor, which is great, but we're also out in the community because we have partnerships with the library, and we're part of On Track, and we're part of ECAC, so we have great partnerships. We just are out of funding until we get our new grant. The new grants have now put out RFPs. One was supposed to be due October 12th. They've now pushed that to October 18th as the due date, and the second grant will be due October 21st. We will be informed of our funding, fingers crossed, December 1. We also have a small grant out with JLG right now, so hopefully they're going to fund us as well. We should know something about that in November, by November 10th, if they're going to fund us. But what is happening now is that none of our families are getting any services from us because we're out of money. So I've come today to beg for money. We've looked around at all the different agencies that are viable to maybe have some funding, and for whatever reasons, we have not qualified in a lot of those arenas. Like I said, I work for Frostburg. We're considered a 501c3 under the Frostburg Foundation. So for example, Washington County has an RFP out right now for $1.5 million. And I thought we would perhaps qualify for that, but we don't because of the way that we fall under the foundation, and they have a rule about a secondary agency. So they said, no, we didn't qualify. So that's what we've come in front of you today, is to talk about how we might be able to get some, hopefully ARPA temporary funding to get us to the new year so our families aren't waiting for us till January to get back and play. So my last story will be about my employees that I brought with me. I've prepped them ahead of time. This is Sandra Balbueno. This is Sharday Holmes. So both of them have been parents in our programs in the past. I'll start with Sandra. Sandra started out as a parent in our program, and she was fantastic, and she came here from Puerto Rico, and she's worked in our school system, and she has 2 little girls and was active in our programming. And then we had an opening, and she moved into a lead teacher position, and then she was able to move in, and she is now our community director. Sandra is so well respected in the state. I have people that would love to hire her out from under me. I don't want that to happen. And so I'm desperate to get her back at work. She is bilingual, which is very helpful for us in the city. She's able to work with a lot of different families, and she works very closely with Judy Center as well. So she's great at the recruiting aspect of getting our families to want to participate and be part of our programming. This is Sharday Holmes. She is our success story. Sharday started with us at the Family Center. She was a young mom finishing out her high school degree. She then went to HCC and then transferred to Frostburg for her early childhood elementary degree. She's recently graduated, and she is a certified teacher, and she works in our program. And we want to keep her too. So our program has a track record of success with our families. These are my two best examples for you. Yes, but we have lots of families that are part of our community. And I was listening to your meeting as it started. And the thing that I would want you to know is we are that connection. We really are the hub. A lot of our families are a little skittish about being part of the school system. They've had bad school experiences themselves. So they look at us as the professionals that know what we're doing, and they don't want to get involved. And what we know from research is that family engagement is the #1 component to a kid's success. So if we want to keep those families engaged in their kids' activities, we've got to get to them young. And that's what we're really doing. And then we connect them to all the different services, and we stay with them and mentor them as they're entering school. So that's my presentation. You'll see on the back, we are now, with Frostburg Foundation, we now have a line item. We have a QR code. So anybody here can scan our QR code and give us money if you'd like to. Because we really just want to get back to work with our families. So I thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Is the ask 20,000?
Yes, that would get us through December 31st. By then, I would have money from the grants. I've received Part B special education. I don't want to get in the weeds with you about what the money is. I've received Part B special education funding since 2014. I anticipate that we will receive that money as well. When that grant RFP didn't come right away, I applied for 2 other grants. I'm suspecting we're going to get a pretty decent load of money back in come the new year. Which is really weird, but here we sit right now out of funds, and we can't get to work, we can't get with our families. So to think that we're gonna have families waiting 4 more months is just horrible. A horrible idea that we can't get to them, when right now is when it's really important to get to them. Particularly our 2s and 3-year-olds. They're gonna age up come the new year. And so we're going to be looking at kids that we're trying to get into Head Start programs, or we're trying to get into our preschool programs that are really going to need those programs. We get a lot of families that they're not identified yet, and those are kids that are going to need some special education services. But they're not on anybody's radar yet. But we'll find them. They'll find us. We're a lot of word of mouth. We have social media. We have a Facebook page. We have all those things. And our families like that. But we're a word of mouth organization. One family has success with us, they tell some other families. And that's sort of how it works. But that's our expectation, is that we will have funding. The state has always funded us. And I do the cardinal rule that you're not supposed to do, which is ask for more money. I've asked for more money every year, and they've always given it to us. We have good data. We have data to support that our families are successful and they stay with us. I could have filled the room with our families, but we told them that probably wouldn't be good today.
I just have one other little question.
Sure.
I see that 52% live in the city limits.
Correct.
In last year's academic year. Have you, even though the ARPA funding, you weren't eligible, have you approached the county at all for any of the county commissioners?
I did.
And how'd that go?
Not well.
Okay.
I struggled to get past that, and it became the conversation of, if we fund you, then should we fund other early childhood programs? And this is a city program. And I said, well, it's not really. No, I said, we're located in the city. We have our office, our classrooms in the city. So, but, we pull families from around. And it kind of stopped. And then they told me about, well, we're putting out $1.5 million. You can apply for that. So when that came out, I was very excited. So I called and said, I think we can fill out and apply for this. And this is how we would apply under the 501c3 with foundation, and they said you're not eligible.
And I have this frustration all the time because I think that local governments across the board have had some difficulty in reading the fine print, which is in the document that you provide, which is that the ARPA funds are intended to address the pandemic-oriented impacts, especially associated with the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on qualified census tracts. I mean, you're literally the definition of what the county grant program should be addressing was an impact during a process. The federal government did not provide local governments this funding to go do a bunch of new, different stuff with. I get frustrated by that, and so I appreciate you outlining, one, that you're apparently not eligible for something that's exactly the purpose of the funding, and two, outlining to us sort of, why you're here at this table. In other words, you're not here to say, hey, I'm starting a new program, you know what I mean? I'd like to do these things. You're saying, look, we've taken a hit for the 3 years that everybody's been under wraps, and our ship is at the end. So I appreciate you outlining that. Because I think that's what our ARPA funding is supposed to find and address.
It was actually a student that came to me and said, you should apply for ARPA funds. And I said, do you think we qualify for ARPA funds? Because I was talking about the hub in a class. And they said, yeah, I think you qualify for ARPA funds. So I started asking around, and then that's how I got to Mr. Nicehorner and said, do I qualify for ARPA funds? I have employees that are laid off. I have families that aren't getting services, and they're just languishing.
The answer is yes. And congratulations to the both of you.
Yes.
They're wildly successful. And the program.
They are wildly successful.
Yes.
They're amazing.
It's extremely
Yes.
impressive. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes. And
Thank
yes.
you.
And yes. And yes. And yes.
Okay.
Not clear.
And yes.
Will you let me know what I need to do next, Mr. Nicehorner? Thank you so much. Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, your hard work.
Thank you. Choice Neighborhood Partnership with Hagerstown Housing Authority.
Hey, how are y'all doing today?
We just did a good thing. We're good. I don't even know they ain't open.
All right, well, thank you all for having us tonight. Just a couple disclaimers before we go into this. This is a HUD PowerPoint presentation that I kind of chopped up. It was originally 40-some slides, so I didn't want you to think that I was hiding stuff from you. Donna does have a copy of the full presentation. This is just some of the key points that I wanted to discuss today, and please interrupt me, if you have any questions. So,
It's already a feather in your hat.
So what is choice neighborhoods? A little bit later in here, it uses a term that I really like. It's community transformation or neighborhood transformation. And choice neighborhoods, there's really two parts to it. There's a planning grant, which basically looks at a specific geographical area within any city or community and really looks at what the needs are in that general area. The Housing Authority has kind of been looking at our 5/10 year, what we're going to do with our properties and moving forward, just to keep them up to par with where they should be. And we were looking at our two communities up in the Jonathan Street area, Parkside and Douglas, and we realized that maybe just looking at our particular areas may not be where we want to limit it. And what the Choice Neighborhood Grant does is really gives us the opportunity to expand and really branch out into, again, a geographical area within the city. So what we're asking for today really is to kind of have a discussion about the planning grant. Once the planning grant occurs, you also have the ability to apply for what they call an implementation grant. So whatever the plan is, you can apply for a grant to implement what that plan shows. So there's really three main parts to this grant. Housing. Housing is the first one. where this kind of comes into play with the housing authority is we do have about 79 affordable housing units in that geographical area that we would like to potentially upgrade, you know, revitalize them to some degree. In addition to that, where housing is discussed, it also looks at transforming other houses in that general community, not just affordable housing, as well as home ownership. So it's really just not restricted to affordable housing. It branches out. Homeowners can have work done on their units. You know, rental units can also be, you know, upgraded and modernized. But then the second part of that is it really looks at the people. What is the need in that community? Is education, you know, requirements being met? Healthcare being met, those kind of things for that, again, geographical area. And then it goes into the whole neighborhood. What's the need in the neighborhood? Is there, you know, grocery stores? Are there, you know, healthcare providers? Is there retail there that is needed to make that part of the community, you know, self-sufficient? So again, those are really the three parts of that particular grant. So again, we're here to discuss today the planning grant. The planning grant can be up to a $500,000 award. It's a 2-year grant. So in other words, you know, if we apply and we are able to get the grant, we have 2 years to utilize the $500,000. And what that $500,000 really entails is community outreach, planning what that part of the community should look like. It's not what the housing authority wants it to look like. It's not what the city wants it to look like. It's what does the community itself want it to look like. So the expectation of this grant is, for lack of better terms, people are going to be out there door knocking, whether it be, you know, our staff, city staff, a consultant. That's really all to be determined. We'll go out into the community, meet with the community, and again, knock on doors. What do you need in this community? You know, where are areas that could be improved? You know, transportation, retail, you know, quality housing. So again, it's not the housing authority, it's not the city, it's what the community feels the need is for that area. So again, this is just some of the eligible costs for the planning grant. And ultimately, where we want to end up is a plan for whatever that geographical area is that we identify. That is to be determined. Like I said, we're kind of looking at our communities in the Jonathan Street area, but I think, you know, having a bigger conversation, what those boundaries look like, where it makes sense to put this focus and really stress what we're trying to accomplish here. And the nice thing about this is the planning grant can offset salaries, in addition to, you know, hiring consultants. So if, you know, let's just say we need the city engineer to come out and do something for us, we can offset his salary with whatever that is, you know, he's doing for this particular portion of the grant. So it could be used for multiple things, and there's another slide in here, which we'll get into in a minute. Well, actually, it's the next one. In addition to basically salaries, consulting, you know, getting the plan together, you can also use up to $150,000 of this grant to basically start a project. So, you know, it's nice to say, okay, we want to come in here, we want to do this, you know, this is the plan. But you're allowed to take of that planning grant $150,000 and actually start something. So people can actually see that there is progress being made, something is occurring. So again, a lot of it's really for the planning process, the salaries, the consultants, and all that kind of stuff. But we can, if we opt to, earmark $150,000 to start a project with that grant. The next one, who is eligible? The reason I took this slide is really that first box, you may have a co-applicant. So really our ask today is, would the city be willing to go into this with the housing authority, because it is bigger than us. It's not just housing authority properties, it's a good chunk of the city. And we'd like to really partner with you, not only in filling out the application, but moving forward if the grant is awarded. Again, this is a competitive grant, so it's not guaranteed. But I think, you know, if we have the city and the housing authority partner in this grant, I think it gives us a much better opportunity of being successful in obtaining the planning grant portion of this. The next slide is basically just some of the general submission requirements. I'm not going to read through these because the next slide actually gives you a little bit more detail. So these are kind of the rating factors, and a lot of what I pulled out is a little bit more detail about each one of these. That's why I didn't think, you know, not appropriate to really discuss that here. But these are kind of some of the point systems that, you know, HUD will look at when they receive our application. And again, a lot of it you'll see in here is resident and community engagement. That is critical. Again, we don't want to walk in here and have an expectation that my expectation's A or the city's expectation's this. We need to hear what the community needs and really make this plan about the community and not just the housing authority or the people sitting around this table. So the next slide, I did point out one of the rating factors, which is staffing plan. They do want a dedicated project manager, which would be 50% of that particular person's time or more. And again, the planning grant can also utilize that 50% of the salary to offset, any loss that maybe the housing authority would receive or the city would receive for that particular employee. So they really do want to see a lot of staff involvement and consulting involvement if that's the route, we decide to go on if the grant's awarded. The next slide, I am trying to get some more clarification on this. They do want to see either the housing authority or city both leverage, help out a little bit with this in the form of cash. What I'm trying to find out is what that amount exactly is. I would expect, a lot of what's going on potentially with Wheaton Park and those kind of things would be cash that maybe could be leveraged against, part of this grant. The housing authority would also have a stake in it. I have a feeling, based on what I'm understanding, it's very minimal. It's not $100,000, it's probably like 20 or 25, but I'm still waiting on confirmation on that. So just to be transparent, they are asking for a little bit of support from the local jurisdiction moving forward with this grant. And the last slide, I just wanted to point out, is this is Columbus, who actually applied for the planning grant and received the implementation grant. And the implementation grant, you can receive up to $50 million if you apply and you're successful. In Columbus, they received 30, might have been all they were asking for at the time. Maybe that's all the grant was able to offer, I'm not sure. But they also leveraged an additional $225 million in additional funding. So in theory, if they ask for the majority of the grant, or the full $50 million, you'd be looking at $275 million to help transform a particular area of the community. I mean, it's huge. And again, that could be leveraging tax credits, things like that, and just bringing in other sources of funding to help, make the plan work. Basically, here, what they did is they got 450 units, mixed income. Again, mixed income could be our 79 affordable, market rate, home ownership units, but they were able to achieve 450 units, again, multi-phase approach, probably multi-phase because they did use 9% tax credits or 4% tax credits and did it in a phased approach. They also did a lot with the residents, healthcare, wellness, education, employment opportunities, help find employment opportunities for the residents of that particular geographical area. And the last one is, again, the neighborhood. They invested in parks, commercial areas, again, retail space. So again, it's not just housing, it's community as a whole, which is what's really impressive about this grant. So again, our ask is for a partnership from the city to work together, maybe a team from the city, team from the housing authority, to get the application established, developed, submitted. And then once that's done, have a team from both sides that get together and work through the actual planning portion of this grant. So again, it's $500,000 for the planning portion up to 2 years. And with that, when that's done, we do have the ability to go through and apply for the implementation grant. We'll have the plans in place, we'll have the majority of what we need to be able to apply for the grant. But if we're unsuccessful in that grant, at least we have a plan. I mean, we'll know what the plan is, what the community wants, what the neighborhood wants, and we can look at other revenue streams. I mean, there are some out there that we could, look to or apply again the following year. I mean, we don't have to, just apply 1 year. We could apply the following year if we're not successful. But we could also, look at other funding streams. And, once you have the plan in place, you really know what you're looking for and what you're trying to accomplish. So again, that's kind of a high-level summary of this grant and kind of a summary of our ask from the city.
So, I'm not familiar with the Columbus, Ohio example specifically. When I read these points here, and I know you mentioned, that you would be looking, at least if I'm understanding correctly, you'd be looking at existing areas of the city, i.e. developed areas. When I read the Columbus, Ohio, it almost sounds like what they did was find an area that had not yet been developed.
Ideally, what it is really transformation for an existing community is really the goal of this grant. So they want to transform an area that needs transformation.
Not go to a place like a greenfield place and build an entirely new thing.
That is correct.
Okay.
Doesn't
'Cause
mean that
I would not be supportive of that. I would certainly be supportive if we say, hey, we're gonna look in an area, you know, of the city or areas of the city and say,
And it
hey,
can be multiple areas, it doesn't need to be
Right, right.
landlocked by a square. We can take a smaller square here and look at another square over here. That is definitely an opportunity as well, based on what I understand of this ground. I'm not an expert in it either, I mean, we're just now starting to look at it. But yeah, we define what that geographical area is. Now, if that means we wanna, you know, draw a box here, but then we want some green space up here, that's something we can do as well. But I agree, I think we need to look at what's existing and focus on that.
I mean, I'm supportive of a partnership. What a novel concept to ask
Oh
the
my
community
gosh.
what they
What they
want.
want.
We've been saying that.
And then rap case management around
I-
it is incredible. Yeah,
I mean,
Totally supportive of it.
yeah,
Can't wait.
yeah.
So yes, okay.
So I guess, just so I'm clear, the next step is we'll, at the Housing Authority, establish a team, maybe work with you, Scott, to establish a team. And this is this year's NOFA, or NOFO, whichever. I would expect the application to be due in July, and it sounds like it's a pretty extensive application. So even though it may change a little bit from what we're looking at here today, I think it's gonna be really close. The sooner we get started, I think the better off we'll be.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take us down Fieldhouse.
We keep that.
Thank you. That's all, yes.
Great. I've asked John to come give us a update on our Fieldhouse project. We know this is a priority. Lobbyists were here a little bit earlier, working toward getting funding that we need for this project. The goal is we want to be ready when the springtime comes, and hopefully we can secure more state funding. We want to be ready to go with this. So John's going to give us an update on what we've been working on the last couple of months, and the costs are going up, so we need to get this done. So go ahead, John.
Thanks for having me back. Just to.
Was that great lead in, John?
Raise back, John.
Let's go.
Bring them back down off the ceiling.
To review, we've done 2 phases so far with you, and we're at the end of the second phase. In the first phase, you asked us to put together a conceptual design, conceptual business plan, conceptual site plan, conceptual construction budget. You liked everything that you saw there, and you made the decision, let's spend some more money and go to an economic impact report and a set of drawings that were complete enough that we could get a more accurate price as to what the project would actually cost. And also the legal agreements that would allow us to construct the building and operate the building. Those were the deliverables for this second phase. At the time, as we were laying out these phases, we imagined that the third phase would be the construction of the building. And the fourth phase, of course, is the operation of the building. I think where we are now, just with the way that the funding, the filling of the capital stack has worked, I think we're really probably going to a phase 3A and 3B, just so that we can keep schedule and keep the timing right for making sure that, as we have learned from the last legislative session, that having the project shovel-ready is of critical importance. And the legal agreements for, especially the construction, less so the lease and operation, are a little bit more complex than we had originally imagined due to Maryland law and then how we relate to the city and the city would relate to the actual general contractor building it. But I'll cover that when we get to it. So I came back a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and we ran over the economic impact report. As this meeting, I am trying to review all of the deliverables for phase 2. I'm going to quickly run over that. At the time when we did it, we had a $22 million budget for construction. That was divided up into half on material, half on labor. It is thought through this report that we're going to generate 164 direct jobs and 60 induced, and that wages will create 400,000 in additional spending. That there would be a $33 million direct and induced impact from the construction of the facility. This facility, through its 4 basketball courts, is going to have tournament and visitor impact. We're planning on 26 events annually at steady state, which would be after year 3. 768 teams a year, 27,000 visitors, about 9,200 room nights, 1.3 million in hotel spending annually, with additional visitor spending of about 2.3 million. The 20-year impact, direct and indirect jobs, 50, salaries and wages paid, direct and indirect, 30 million, taxable sales and purchases, 89 million. Hagerstown revenue over that period of time, amusement taxes, 2.4 million, real estate taxes or payment in lieu of taxes, 2.5 million, miscellaneous taxes and fees, 128,000. The rent that we would pay, which in the lease is defined as a split of net revenue, be about 10 million for a total of about 15 million over the 20 years. Washington County and the state of Maryland would also receive revenue. Washington County local income taxes, about $1 million. Hotel taxes, $2.2 million. Another 156 in miscellaneous. State of Maryland in sales taxes, 5.3 million, and income taxes, 1.5. I run over all of this here again. This is the exact same information you saw previously, just to remind you, and you in turn can remind the public and all the funders at the state agencies about what an impactful project this will be economically, without even talking about the impact on the quality of life of the citizens, both of Hagerstown and Washington County. So here's the budget. We finished the plans about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and we went out to market to a local general contractor in the Hagerstown area and had them price those plans. As you remember, the previous set of plans that they priced were only 2 pages, right? And now we're talking about hundreds of pages of documents that they're working from. It went up about $2.3 million, which, considering that we're running about 8 to 10% inflation over the trailing 12 months, was not as bad as we were worried that it might have been. Let me just go over a couple of the key areas and what the key deltas were. On the site, we had assumed that we were going to be able to reuse the pavement. After we paid the engineers to do a survey of the pavement, and after the design was done that showed the provision of services, especially fire services, there was going to be quite a bit of trenching and pulling up of pavement, so we were way off on our original paving number. For the building, the key deltas are all the trades, the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, the HVAC. All of the raw materials and all of the labor on those are significantly more expensive. Additionally, when they came back with the HVAC design, originally we had considered doing one entire pre-engineered metal building for the whole structure. The decision was made to save money on HVAC, to spend a little bit more on the building, meaning now we have a pre-engineered metal building in the current design for the basketball area, a conventional steel structure in the middle, and a pre-engineered metal building for the artificial turf area. So really now we're talking about 3 buildings. It will be seamless on the inside. No one will know it's 3 buildings on the inside. But that was done so that a more stable flat roof could be had in the center, so that all the air conditioning units could be placed. In the original design, we had larger units. Now we have more smaller units. That created a need for more space, and just generally the engineers felt that that was a better design. So that was an increase in steel costs. You could see between the site and the building, that's the lion's share of the increase overall. The sports FF&E, the audiovisual, and the IT, the delta there is, it's a little bit on us. When we originally done this at the conceptual stage, between the general contractor that we had utilized then and our own data, that data was not current. When our Memphis project In between that point and this point, we have now bought all the TVs, speakers, Wi-Fi access points, electronic signage, large video scoreboards, et cetera, all the things that go into a sports facility like that. All of those have increased in price dramatically. The labor for that has increased in price dramatically. Where we were able to save a little bit money going from the one budget to the next, we originally had placed a placeholder of 2.5 million for design and soft costs. Now that all of those decisions have been made, we were able to tighten up that number quite a bit. Additionally, the contractor fee, we are still carrying 3 million in contingencies and escalations. Just to make sure that this number didn't look too bad, we pulled about 500,000 out of the escalations. Now, the environment that we're in, it's interesting, because this has been an ongoing conversation over the last 6 months as we've been going through this phase 2, doing these plans and trying to figure out a couple things. At what point in time, how much escalation do we need to include in the budget? Looking forward, what does the environment look like? I think our answer 6 months ago would be different than it is now. 6 months ago, we didn't think there was any chance we could get a general contractor to even agree to a guaranteed max price contract. Just in the last 6 months, I think that's changed. Since we're not going to be signing this contract for another 5 months or so, maybe 6, I think it's probably going to be an even better environment than where we are right now. So there's some reason for hope there that we're not going to have to tap into those contingencies and as well, certainly the escalation part of it. Prices, lead times, everything is coming down. Lead times were leading to competition for assets, whether it was air conditioning units or switch gear or switch panels. All of those things have been really, really, really hard to get in construction. And as a result, the prices were going way up. You're seeing that. Already, this is 30 to 45-day-old information that you're looking at right now. So, so that's where we stand on a budget. We feel, given the detail that we have in the plans that we have paid for and have on the table right now, the general contractor we're using, and the direction of the overall environment, we feel really, really good about this number, that it's not going to be any more when we get down to
So
it.
just to be clear, you actually got a price from a contractor for this, but we're still gonna bid it. As we get the plans and everything
Correct.
together, it's gonna go out to the
Correct.
market for a bid. But this just shows us that these aren't just numbers that I came up with, for example. This is something that a real contractor put together that we can feel confident about.
In a different situation where we didn't have this volatile environment, number one. Number two, where the funding was settled, this price that we got would form the basis of the contract for building this building. Given the fact that we're not fully funded in the capital stack right now, and the volatile environment, this is another benchmark price, and that when we get to 100% plans and permits, and we go through the bid process, that's when we will have a price that will be the final price of this building. And we strongly think that it will be lower than the number I'm showing you today.
Yeah, I agree. The lead time has definitely declined in a number of industries, as well as asset availability has definitely increased. The one delta that hasn't changed is labor cost. I
That's
think
right.
that one is the one that is not going to change over the next 6 to 12 months.
Agree. So the other deliverable then was the legal agreements. And when I said they were a little bit thornier than we thought, in the original conception, you guys were going to contract with us, and we in turn were going to contract with the general contractor. That's the way we do it in Virginia. We were informed by our attorneys that that's not possible here in the state of Maryland, number one. Number two, because of procurement rules in the state of Maryland. Number two, it was felt that it was probably just going to be in the city's interest to have more of a direct relationship with that general contractor. We're still at the table, we're still guiding the process, we help prepare the bid documents, we oversee the bid, but it's running through your bid rules and ultimately through your contracting department.
And we have to comply with state rules now too, because we're getting state money. We already have some, we're going to get a lot more. So we have to comply with those rules as well, which requires us to bid.
Do you feel that'll have an impact on who?
In what sense?
Oh, and let's take West Virginia as an example, you know, because I'm familiar obviously with Maryland, West Virginia as it applies to building, but you know what I mean, in terms of which contractors. So certain contractors that may do work more readily in West Virginia or Virginia may not as readily jump over, you know, and do work in Maryland. I was just curious if you think those procurement rules are going to change who you believe might be interested in bidding the project as it applies to players that you know in the industries
Yeah.
coming to Maryland to do it versus.
It's a good question. Our thought was that the way we were going to present it out to the public, that it's going to have the strong feel that this is being privately run as a bid, even though it's following the rules,
Okay.
regulations, and processes of the city of Hagerstown.
To get a broader array of
A
potential
broader array and to
interest. Yeah,
keep folks, keep the costs down.
yeah,
Keep the costs
that's
down.
good.
Yeah. So now, as far as this, in the original conception of the plan, it was this development agreement that would be the next thing that would take us to 100% plans that are for submitting for permits, ready to go for construction. Now, in your phase two contract, you guys already bought the site plan to 100% plus a permit. So the site plan is at the very end of its process, it's in for a permit.
It's about 80%.
So we anticipate that in the fourth quarter of this year, probably, that's gonna be permitted. So the statement to various constituencies, funders in particular, that this project is shovel-ready in the first quarter of 2023 should be true. That said, we want to make sure that after that site work begins, that the building is in the place that it can be begun in its proper sequence, which is shortly thereafter. And so, therefore, I recommended to Rodney that rather than place 100% architectural plans in the development agreement, that you do a continuation of the current consulting agreement while we work out all the various parties that are rendering their opinion on the development agreement, so that that next tranche of work is not held up by the legal work on that agreement.
So we still have more design work to finish.
Right.
The architectural plans are like 35%. So what he's saying is to finish those construction drawings, we need to do that under the existing agreement we have. In the future, in the very near future, we're going to bring this development agreement back to you, which is about the building of the structure and our relationship with them then.
The legwork
And we're s-
part.
Yeah, and we're still
the
working
partnership
on
part.
that, as we are the lease, which is the operation of it, two different documents.
And so we have, we submitted a draft of the development agreement, the city reacted to it, we reacted to the city's reactions, we've had a phone conversation. That's when we learned that the architect contract that we had already signed now needs to be brought in compatibility with the development agreement, so we're working on that. So there was a couple more hurdles on that we hadn't anticipated that we're currently working through. But if we want to keep that schedule wherein we hopefully can begin construction at the second quarter of next year, then we really ought to keep on track for getting these drawings all the way done.
So that would be something that I would bring to you later this month, is to finish those drawings.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I recognize that in the second portion of this presentation, what you're saying is there are still devils in the details as it applies to those agreements.
Yeah.
But for me, and this is just me, and I think I feel more comfortable, let me correct, I feel more comfortable now than I comfortably felt before as it applies to the first half of your presentation. Because at the beginning of this partnership, right, you know, it's an idea, it's a concept that's out there, and you go, okay, you know, can we make this thing happen, right? And you see the number going up, right? And we hear 10 million, we hear 17 million, and 22, and we see that, and that gives me pause. But I have to remember the first part of your presentation, you didn't change those numbers either from last presentation. In other words, what the city stands to make over the term and the impact over that period economically. You know what I mean? All you did was change the second half. So I look at that first half and go, okay, we didn't change those numbers, but those numbers are going to change because if labor's going up and cost and attendance, all of that, as it applies to economics in its totality, it's all going to go up. So that $89 million that you vetted out 6 months ago in your conceptual analysis
Yeah, that's right.
is now $96 million over that 20, and that 15.9 million that the city stands to make over that 20-year partnership isn't 15.9, it's like 17 and a half. So those numbers have to go up commensurate with the fact that costs are going up, because one isn't going to go up without the other.
And I think our vendor on that would be more than happy if I went back to them and said, hey, let's rerun this today, because they've already built that machine. They just gotta change a couple of inputs and the information comes right back.
And for me, I don't need that. I would have been less comfortable if that total expectation were going up, and you were to look at it and say, as your partner, I'm probably not gonna have to ask for conditions or contingencies on going back on some of those numbers from the first half, meaning the amusement tax, and you know what I mean? And that hasn't happened. I would be cautious if we reach the point where you say, hey, I can make this happen, but I'm gonna need you to chunk out what I told you you were going to stand to make over time.
So just from our other operating businesses over the last 6 months and the last 12 months, and then reaching back into the pandemic, you know, you guys have heard me say this before, in the spring of 2020, we were standing at the edge of a large black hole looking down into the abyss. And we came through it, and we got through it. The question remained, is anyone ever going to go back inside, you know, and sweat on each other and breathe on each other? That was a real question, you know, as late as the first quarter of 2021. Our financial results across all of our facilities have said, not only have they come back, they're coming back in greater numbers than they were before. There's a little bit of YOLO in there, right? Everybody said, I don't want to do that again. And I want to go out and recreate with my friends, right?
Oh, I mean, I think recreation got people through that process, you know, the sanity, through that process for a period of time that we didn't recognize the level of importance of until that's all we had to grab and hold on to for 6 months.
I think that's correct. And so one of the real bellwethers of that for us was kid summer camp. We're not talking about the high-skilled soccer camp or lacrosse camp, but hey, let's just have fun for 3 to 6 hours a day over at the facility, kicking a ball around, doing a little finger painting, et cetera, et cetera. Those numbers, when we got into the summer of 21, they went through the roof, and we said, okay, what's going on here? And since we're all families and we've got kids, we knew about cabin fever. And and we knew.
That was real.
We knew
Greatest in my
about
kid.
everybody's desire to get out of the house and do things. And so we said, let's look at what happens in 2022. That's gonna tell us if really it was just this freakish little rebound coming out of us all being cooped up. 22 numbers were better than 21. And so, folks are back. I'm not worried about the business model whatsoever. I'm sure that it's going to be successful.
So we're moving on with 3A.
3A.
We'll have it on the regular session.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to
Glad
see
to
you.
be here.
Appreciate your
Glad to be back.
enthusiasm.
All right, trick or treat.
Trick or treat, my favorite time of the year. This is just a request of council to continue the policy that we put forth back in 2020, that the city will recognize Monday, October 31st, from 6 to 8 as neighborhood trick or treat. Your opportunity to participate or not in trick or treat. It's totally up to the family, and since trick or treat is not being scheduled by the city, we would not reschedule trick or treat should there be a monsoon, a snowstorm, rain, snow, sleet, or hail. And we will not have a rain date for trick or treat. Basically, we won't cancel it. You do it if you want to do it within your neighborhood. We will be out in force, watching neighborhoods being available Monday, October 31st from 6 to 8.
I want to keep it the way that, yeah.
If you all good with that, we will
Yeah.
stay, and we will get a press release out stating that.
City of Hagerstown is not.
We will, yeah. It is Monday, October 31st, 6 to 8, rain, snow, sleet, or hail. We will not reschedule, it's not, this is up to the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Wendy Halloween is still very fresh in my memory, so, yeah.
PTSD
Oh,
from
my
Halloween
goodness.
2020.
Skate park discussion.
Councilmember, almost called you mayor, sorry.
Okay.
Just want to have this opportunity, I have Joey here, Eric is here, Kevin is here, just to talk a little bit about the skate park since it opened, some challenges that we've had at the skate park, and things that Joey and the skate park task force, who has been very, very cooperative and engaged in the effort, are doing to try to make learning as we go, so to speak, with the activity at the skate park. So Joe, Eric, and Kevin is here also from any liability questions you might have.
Well, first, thank you for having us here tonight. So a few weekends ago, we had some pretty substantial issues at the skate park, both Friday and Saturday evening, where my guys were there to deal with the situations. What I can say about those things is that several people were arrested and charged with some various crimes. But what I've gotten from my staff and from the officers that were there, it was not the actual people using the park for legitimate reasons. They weren't the skateboarders, they weren't the BMX riders, they weren't the rollerbladers. It was another faction of young people showing up there to cause chaos. We went out and met Monday last week and had a meeting with the task force, with Parks and Rec staff, my staff, to discuss moving forward how we could work collaboratively to address some of those issues to keep those from happening in the future. And so what we've gotten from Phil and Will and the others from the skate park task force is that they would be willing to be intermediaries. They would show up out there in the evenings when they can and kind of monitor what's going on, because as we know and as we've learned, the skateboarding community, the BMX community, they are somewhat of a rebellious group anyway. So they're not going to be the group that's going to pick the phone up and call law enforcement when something's going on. But if you have the adults in the room that are out there that are helping, especially at night when it's closing and things like that, that they would make those phone calls and work on that. Eric's staff doesn't have the staff to be monitoring and walking through there all the time. I don't have the staff to do that all the time, nor do we feel it's necessary to do that. I believe Eric would agree with that. These are isolated incidents. These are brand-new situations that were occurring, and albeit very visual and very big in the sense there was 100 kids out there, but 10 or 15 of them were the ones causing the problem. It looked bigger than what it was. We kind of had it under control, and since then, we've not really had any issues since that weekend, 2 weekends ago. A couple minor things here and there that we've been addressing. We're continuing to meet and work on basic engagement and rules and how we want to approach those things at skate park. Been out there several times myself since then. You're going through and you'll see 10 young people using it, 30 people using it. The first time I went out there on that Monday night, there was 100 kids standing around. Within an hour, it was down to about 30, which is about what it would probably be, because you got 100 kids, they can't actually use the thing anyway. There's too many kids around the bowl. There's no space. So talking to Phil and talking to the skateboard community people, the older guys, these kinds of things kind of self-regulate themselves. The skateboarders and the BMX riders will start to police themselves within that park. And obviously, if things take a much more dire turn, we've got plans on what we would do to work on those things. We got the camera system out there. We can monitor and work on that. Skateboard task force guys are monitoring that on a pretty regular basis. If they see something, they're letting us know. We've actually talked to, on the Envy side that Council Member McIntyre and I sat on, we've talked to our newest executive board member that's from the Board of Education. They are going to monitor the cameras, especially during the day. You see kids that are out there that probably should be in school that are using the park. They're going to send their staff, their PPE workers out to address those issues. So there's other things that we can do to try to address those, but knock on wood, since that weekend, 2 weekends ago, it's been pretty quiet. I mean, you have any kind of situation like that where kids or young people are involved, you're going to have a fight here, a fight there. That's not really the concern that Eric and I have. The concern that I have, the one that scares me the most, was when you have those situations where you've got 5 or 6 of these kids throwing rocks the size of golf balls at my guys when they show up to address an issue that's going on. And I have a ride-along that's looking to come to work for us, gets hit in the head with one of those rocks. That's bad enough. Showing up out there with any kind of weapons and causing one of these young people to be seriously injured or lose their lives is the fear that I have, and that's what we've all talked about. That's the goal, to avoid that. And I think working through this with the newness of the park, working its way out, I think that'll die down on its own, and we won't have as much of those issues. I know there's some opportunities in the future for maybe, some other things we can do for some other kids, but those are for another discussion. So that's where I'm at. I'll let Eric talk about it.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that, the majority of people that are going out there just want to have a good time. They just want to, it's a fantastic facility. There's no question about that. And unfortunately, like most things, it only takes a few people to ruin it for everybody else. But as Joey has mentioned, most of that has calmed down. Part of that's been weather related. When it rains, it makes it tough to do any of that stuff. So, and it's going to be a little cooler and colder, going forward. So it is shiny and new. Everybody wants to be out there, see what's going on, see what they can do to disrupt a few others, unfortunately. But they've done a great job handling that. We appreciate all their efforts. I will say officially the task force doesn't exist anymore, but the group, the members on that group still want to be involved and want to help, and they have been helping. In fact, I was just texting Phil just a moment ago before I came up here to work through some issues. So it's a great thing, and we just need to keep working at it. It's like anything, you got to work the bugs out of it when it's new. It's going to take a little time.
And we're not the first. We've asked Phil and his group to look at other areas, to look at Tony Hawk's Foundation and talk to those other groups that have built these things around the country that they mirrored after, and find out when they've had issues, what did they do, and how could they, how could we work on those things instead of trying to invent or create what we think is the solutions when somebody else has already worked on those things. So Phil and his group's going to get back to us when they get some information. They're doing that research and they're doing that legwork for us. So we'll be prepared that if springtime rolls back around and we start getting some bad influences at the park again, that we'll have a better plan to move forward with that. I think we kind of all got caught a little bit behind on the volume of people that were going to show up to this thing. And again, when you go out there and you see 40 or 50 kids with no bikes, no skateboards that are just standing around this thing, that was the problem. And I think once that newness is worn off a little bit, they're not coming back. It's now the skateboarders and the BMX riders that are coming back to use it. But it's a great facility, it really is.
Yeah, there's skateboarders coming from, out of state, other places coming up here, just.
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
They came from New Jersey to come to this park,
Yeah.
specifically come to this park.
Yep.
So,
But he's right, we don't have the staff to just stand, we're not gonna stand over, watch over this 24/7, we just can't. Now, the cameras are running 24/7, and anybody can log on to those cameras and see what's going on at any time. But there's just enough staff to just stand there and police it.
Nor is
all
it
the time.
necessary.
Or is it not?
Yeah,
Agreed,
nor is it
yeah.
necessary.
This was the first place that kids really had of their own. You know, this is the first in our community where you could go and, you know, do all these fun things with flips and such, and we got caught up in the shiny newness of it too, you know, and forgot about, oh, wait a second, there could be like a whole lot of people here and a whole lot of kids that could be a little disruptive, so.
Well, and I've heard stories, and I've actually heard one specifically from a gentleman that's a little older, he's in his 20s probably, that his fiancee was out there using the park, and there were some other young people there that weren't there for that were causing a problem with her, and they were kind of getting a little aggressive with her, and the other skateboard community people that were there stepped up and kind of defended and made sure nothing bad happened. So they policed it themselves, didn't need to call anybody, there was no fight, there was none of that. Some of them have actually stopped people from fighting over the little things. You cut my line off when I'm trying to get down through the bowl or whatever. So they eventually figure it out. There's a culture there, and if you've never really used a skate park like that, and you're using it for the first time, you may not know the unofficial rules of how to use the park with the other riders and people that are using it. So, Phil and those guys are confident that that community will work that stuff out on their own, and you learn how to handle yourself in those situations. So there's no real fear on my part in that sense. I mean, I said a couple weeks ago, had a different opinion, but we got a pretty good grip on that pretty quick, and I'm pretty happy with my guys going out and doing what they did, and kind of put a stop to that pretty fast.
So, I mean, I'm just gonna reiterate what I said at the outset of this is, and I last week or so looked at, there's like, 30 parks, skate parks around the state of Maryland. And 25, 26 out of that 30 have a fence around them. They just do. I go out to Fairgrounds Park and the inline skate, right? The PAL building, the BMX, softball, I mean, it's pretty much the only amenity area that's not fenced in some way, but not fenced in a manner that is prohibitive of use. When I get on the camera and see that individuals have easy access to and they do it on a regular basis, especially late at night, to rip their ATV or dirt bike across, you know what I mean? We're not stopping that. And that's happened, right? And happened with some regularity. And you're right, when you pull up the camera, especially later in the evening, you'll see that there's an interest in hanging out there just, you know what I mean, just on the spot, which is disruptive to individuals that are there to use it for its intended purpose. And then the other issue that I brought up is when I went out, a weekend or two ago, there is no such protections for individuals with special needs, if they were to roll into certain areas, for ADA issues. So for me, I get a little concerned when I see on a Facebook page that we're gonna call for independent individuals to sort of, police a public amenity area, because I think that that's asking for the potential for something bad to happen. And when you read some of the comments of folks, well, I'll go out and I'll take care of it, that isn't how we want to manage public amenity space with individuals, sort of taking that independent approach to do that. And I get it, the kids will do that like they will a pickup, football game at a high school stadium or something, but I think this is of a different nature, and I think that when I look at, just about every one of these types of similar areas around the state and types of amenity spaces we have in our various parks, to me, a fence is keeping the folks that honestly want to use it honest. And I don't know how else to say that. I just think that we're fortunate that it's rained, the last 4 or 5 days and gotten colder, but I don't see that with the ease of access that this has, I don't see that process, especially late evenings and especially late weekend evenings. I don't see that changing without something that says, hey, this is an area that's for an intended use, and this is an area that you shouldn't be in during, you know, hours of non-operation. And right now, it is of such ease of access that it just does not say that. So,
So why do you suppose that the basketball court that was previously there didn't create the same issues? Same location?
Same location, that's right, but there isn't,
I think that it did though. I think that there was still, when it was large groups and
There
stuff,
was
there
an
was still
element.
fights, there was still up with that same pavilion. It's the same thing when I was just out there the other night, it's the same thing that was happening when it was the basketball court. There's a group that sits up on the hill,
And
and then you
the
have the
pavilion.
group that's down here. Yeah, it's the same dynamic, so to speak.
it doesn't create this, it didn't have the same, and I don't know how else to say this, except the same feel of lounging. In other words, the way it's constructed, even if you go to like the pump track and things, I mean, it lends itself to, you know, seating yourself in areas in multiple locations, causing issues with individuals that want to actually use the space for that active purpose it's intended. Folks come over and go, oh, this must be my seat, you know, I'm gonna hang out here. No, that's a part of that amenity area that's supposed to be able to be actively used.
So what would
And
the
it's-
gate do?
I think a fenced area would negate some of that ease of access of interest level, saying, hey, you know, we're gonna go and this is gonna be our lounge spot.
But it's not the skate park that's causing, it's not the skate park. I think that's the whole, it's not the fairgrounds, it's not the basketball court, it's not any of that. So there are approaches, now that we have an organized, we know that there's 10 or 15 kids that are causing disruption, and it's not just at the fairgrounds, it's
Yeah.
all over. So now there is a unified approach, be like, okay, we need to take care of the kids that are causing, or whatever is causing the issue, because it isn't the park. It's not the school, it's none of that.
So if you were
And
to
a
take the
fence is not
fence-
gonna do that.
If you were to take the fences down around the BMX track, what would happen?
You know, ATVs and motocross bikes.
That
Which is the
same
problem,
activity
not the
would
BMX
occur.
park.
I know, that's what I'm saying, that
Right.
same activity would occur. That fence is to encourage that not happening. And I can guarantee you, if you talk to the other 30 communities that have these parks, 90% of which have fences around them in the state of Maryland, you would probably hear that, hey, that's been a benefit to managing the operational capacity of that particular amenity in the space.
I'm not ready to put a fence up.
I'm not ready right now. I wanna see what happens when everything dies down and the skateboard community pulls together and see what happens.
I just think that the optics of it's not what the skate community wants. It's not
So
not
you'd
the
be really
intention.
against my idea, people under 18 years.
Yeah,
of age,
That's
Company
absurd.
buying a dog.
Yeah, I'm not.
That can't happen.
No, I'm not with
But
that.
any rule like that is.
How can you
still have
enforce
to
that?
enforce it. And that's where it comes down to. I mean, we have
Yeah.
lots of rules in the parks.
I get it.
You know, all I'm saying is like, it's a little difficult when you pull it up, you know, you pull up the camera at 11 o'clock at night and there's a kid with a headlight, right? And he's riding his bike around and you're like, great, that's a liability waiting to happen. An individual in a wheelchair has no protection from those areas that clearly have slopes and things that don't meet ADA, right? Have complete access into the space. And you have ATVs and dirt bikes that can come and do damage to the facility repeatedly, you know, with complete ease of access on an issue that we already have problems with. I mean, it's like an inviting space to go do that.
I'm just not ready to, I mean, it's just me, and I would like to do more research, because I am on the other side where there are open skate parks in cities without the fence, and had the same issues in the beginning, and then they worked out how to figure out what to do with the kids, or how not to have that created. I understand that it does look like an open, relaxing area to be able to take your dirt bike through or whatever, but I'd like to see more data to say, like, this is the answer to solving the problem. It's just me.
I agree.
Just the optics of it, I'm just not ready.
I have little doubt that we'll be back before us, or we'll continue to hear, you know,
Yeah, we might as well get a coastal city.
those activities happen.
I'm not saying that this is not gonna happen again. I'm saying it's died down significantly since those 2 weeks ago. And weather may have something to do with it. I think the newness of I'm just gonna go hang out and see what's going on and hang out there. You know, you hang out on a Friday night with your friends and, you know, the activity happens. But then you don't wanna go back and, okay, I'm kinda done, bored, you know, I'll watch these guys do this, okay, saw what I did and I'm moving on. And then you got that small element that's gonna keep coming back, but the 100 kids showing up, 50 of which aren't doing anything but just watching, that part's going away. So less opportunity to hide in a crowd. You know, the dirt bikes, that's an issue. I mean, there's not an easy solution to that. I mean, even if you put up a fence that has, because you have to have a fence and a gate that has access to get the BMX bikes in. So if you can get a BMX bike in, you can get a dirt bike in.
It does, but most of the ones I see are like, you know, traversing across it, you know, or hit it for a few moments and then gone.
Right, and that's, yeah, so, and from the standpoint of it getting damaged because of those activities, is gonna be probably a big driver for some.
We did look at, we talked about the fence, and 4-foot high fence, we talked was like $40,000, because it's a large area. So it's not a small investment.
Was that a chain link fence or what kind of fence?
Yeah, just a standard.
Oh, my
Yeah,
gosh.
chain link
So
fence.
you won't keep anybody out on a chain link fence, they'll climb it.
Well, 42 inches. I mean, it's 4 feet.
They'll get their bike over, they'll get their bike
Yeah,
over,
the
or
bike,
their
it's
skate.
motorcycles.
Motorcycle won't get through it, but.
Yeah, I don't dispute that the fence would probably help with the dirt bikes and that sort of thing, because it would
Right.
be more difficult to get in or just.
So then
run
they
off
just
the
move
road.
to another part of town. The ATVs and the dirt bikes are the problem. I'm just saying, like, okay, the ATVs and the dirt bikes are the problem, not the skate park.
No,
It's
I'm
not
not
the
saying
park.
that it is.
Saying it is, Shelley, we're
I'm
not
saying that it is
skate park's the
that it will
problem. We're trying to
continue to
find a
be an
solution.
inviting area of that nature late in the evening. Like, I just don't think that's going to, you know, to decline significantly over time.
I have another proposal coming in a couple weeks that I hope will remedy some of the dirt bike stuff.
Well, we just need to stop building nice things, that's all.
Yeah, this is why we can't have nice things, right?
I mean, we build great stuff, and I mean, on the other hand, lots of people are using it, or certainly enjoying it, and that's exactly what we
And a
want.
lot of people obviously are, I mean, this is becoming like a crown jewel of the skate park community. It's, I mean, it's getting noticed for good reasons.
And as for policing, the public policing it, that's not anything we've had discussions with. It was them being there to monitor what's going on. So when they see a kid there with a gun, they see someone there dealing drugs trying to deal drugs to young kids, they can make that call to us. We never want anybody to put themselves into engaging with other kids. If it's a matter of some little things going on between some skateboarders, the older skateboard community people can go, and they can kind of help mediate that. But we never want anybody to step up and police the park, because that is not anybody's responsibility to do that. We ask for the skateboard community's help, because they know who's using the park, they know most of these kids, they know who's actually there legitimately doing stuff, and then we see there's other activities, they can make a phone call, because they're adults, they're gonna do that, they're not gonna not snitch, they're gonna call and make the phone call.
And ideally, that's what we want, right? We talk about community and taking back their community, and, I mean, this is a prime example of knowing who's around and knowing the bad individuals and, you know, working together to fix it.
And the skate community and the BMX community are a little bit at odds with each other just naturally, so they're working on how to work together in that sense, the leadership part of that, so they can start to become, you know, because it becomes it's their park. I mean, they're the only ones gonna use it. So if we can get them to kind of police it, when I say police it, police that activity, what's acceptable behavior of those using it, that's gonna make a big difference.
So remember originally we were talking about the basketball court, and that the kids would lose that court, and didn't we talk about like somewhere else or another court or something?
We talked about putting it at Wheaton Park. Taking we talked about the tennis court and creating more of a, because we weren't sure that, this was a while ago, that part of the tennis court wasn't used in creating and making it the basketball court. That was several years ago, though.
I think that when we processed the Wheaton Park improvement plans, the kind of consensus was to not do that.
Yeah.
I think the community wanted to keep it. if I remember,
Yeah, the tennis court,
Do you
right?
think that that's something, like they're missing, like that piece, that the basketball
Maybe.
court
I mean,
moving and?
I mean,
Well, and that's the thing, like talking, and we've talked about this, you know, talking to these individuals, you know, like, what do you want? You know, do we stand around with skateboards and like
help you skate and teach, and, I mean, we just talked about it yesterday at the Envy meeting, so, and no, that's not gonna control bikes and, you know, dirt bikes and things running through there, but it's, if we knew what they were missing, is it a basketball court? Do they feel like we've taken away
I mean,
their?
it was used a lot,
Right.
more than the ones that are kind of caged in, so.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I'm sure you keep us up to date.
Yep.
Yep.
Let us know how it goes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got it, I like it.
City Administrator.
Bunch of stuff happening. October's a busy month, in the city. This Saturday is the annual Harvest Hoedown and Community Yard Sale, at Fairgrounds Park, rain or shine. Community Yard Sale, 7 to 2, with, 72 stalls, at the stalls area there at Fairgrounds Park. The Harvest Hoedown, presented by Maryland Physicians Care, will be held from noon to 4 at the North Pavilion area near the soccer fields. The first 1,000 children aged 12 and under will get a free pumpkin. So be one of the first 1,000 kids out there and get your pumpkin. Ghost tours, Hager House Ghost Tours begin on Fridays and Saturdays this month, 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock, October 7th, 14th, 15th, and 21st. Also, there will be ghost tours that will include paranormal training. Fridays and Saturdays, 7 to 8, October 7th, 14th, 15th, and 21st, at the City Park Train Hub. The Oculus Paranormal team will be doing investigations using actual ghost hunting equipment. There's a fee for that. Actually, a fee for the ghost tours at the Hager House, $15 indoor, $10 if you stay outside, and $20 for the paranormal training. So, oh, and also one more thing. Walk Maryland Day is tomorrow at noon at University Plaza, walking the cultural trail. That's it for me. Thank you.
Shelley.
No, thank you. Good.
Chair. Kristen.
Nothing.
Look at that.
Keep
Grand
going.
slam. Yep. All right, does look like beautiful weather on Saturday, 58, no rain. About time. Good. Go out and enjoy everything around Hagerstown. That's all I got. Adjourn.
Yes.
Yeah.